I was sitting at the counter of this little diner down on 19th Street, Eunice's place. That's not the name of it, that's just who runs it, Eunice. Anyway, I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee, waiting for my breakfast combo. 2 eggs, 2 sausage links, hash browns, wheat toast. There's a guy sitting in the corner booth across from me, smoking a cigarette, endlessly stirring his coffee. Occasionally makes a noise like an inward agreement or confirmation of his thoughts. He's got an ashtray sitting there with about 15 butts in it, an open pack of Lucky Strikes sitting on the top of an unopened pack of Lucky Strikes. Looks like he's been there since last night by the way his clothes hang off of him. "Ain't you gonna eat nothing?" I hear a girl say. I look up and she's standing there at his table. He doesn't look up, just keeps stirring that coffee. "I said, ain't you gonna eat nothing?" He stops mid-stir, takes his hand off the cup and lays it palm down on the table. Slowly raises his eyes up and slightly turns his head to get a better look at her. "You been sitting there for 3 hours stirring that coffee and ain't even drank none of it that I seen. Ain't you gonna eat nothing?" He appears annoyed and looks back down at his coffee, takes a long draw off his cigarette, blows a long stream of smoke down into the cup and says, "No." This girl, who had been sitting at the other end of the diner since I got there, shifts her weight to her other leg, crosses her arms purposefully, and squints her eyes a little. She says, "What's your problem?" He pulls the coffee back over with one finger on the saucer, as if to try and make it take as long as possible. Takes the spoon out of the cup, taps it a few times on the rim, then sits it on the edge of the saucer. He takes another long draw from his cigarette, slowly leans all the way back in the booth, exhales, and says, "My problem is that I like to be alone while I sit here and have my coffee, and you are making that not possible." Then he looks up, hoping she'll walk away, but with a look that says he knows she won't, and says, "What's your problem?" "You ain't even drank none of it. I ain't got no problem." "Honey, everybody's got problems. Now, if you will excuse me, I'd like to get back to mine." With that, she sat down in the booth across from him, rocked from side to side while pulling at her skirt, then took a long look at the man, who seemed to be growing less patient by the second. "I'm Dottie. That's short for Dorothy, but everybody calls me Dot." At that moment, Eunice set a glass of chocolate milk and a plate with a single piece of toast with a big pat of butter on it, slowly melting in front of the girl. "There you go, Jean." The man looked up at the girl with an odd, contorted look on his face. She just kind of smiled and shrugged her shoulders a little. Dorothy Jean Marshall." He looked back down at his coffee and put out his cigarette, reached for the unopened pack to extract another one. She watched with great interest every slow, intentional move he made. "What do they call you?" "Who?" "Everybody, anybody, your friends." He slowly pulled another Lucky Strike out of the pack, tapped it on the table 5 times, as if counting each tap, knowing that 5 was the magic number. Then he took it between his fingers, twirled it around like a magician, preparing to make it disappear, slowly raised it to his lips, took a match out of a matchbook that said Lee's Laundromat on the cover, lit it, and said, "Different people call me different things." She kind of scrunched up her face a bit, as if she thought, ironically, that this was a strange thing. "Well, what's your name?" My name," he paused with a look of contemplation, "is Raymond Alexander Hopkins. The third," he added with a smirk. "But Eunice calls me Tommy." Then he raised his voice toward Eunice, who was sitting my breakfast down in front of me at that moment. "Isn't that right, Eunice?" "Whatever you say, Joe." The girl looked at him with a hint of disdain as she took a bite from her toast. "I know what your problem is, Dorothy Dottie Jean Dot. You're too nosy." "I ain't. Not only that, but you're lonely. Those two things together might be cause for concern, depending upon your emotional state." She shifted her eyes downward, then back up again. "I'm not nosy. I just wondered why you've been sitting here for so long, not eating nothing, stirring a cold cup of coffee and chain-smoking Lucky Strikes." "Wondering don't make you nosy. Asking does." "Well, if you didn't want no company, you should have said it." "I thought I did. Anyway, it should have been obvious." She sat, quietly finishing her toast and chocolate milk, occasionally looking up at him. He sat there quietly stirring the coffee, smoking, occasionally nodding to himself. I finished my breakfast and drank another cup of coffee while listening to Eunice's place slowly come alive with the clink of spoons and forks, the chatter of customers, the noise of the kitchen mixing with the occasional car horn on the increasingly crowded street. I paid, got up, and walked out onto the sidewalk. I had to pick up some Band-Aids from the pharmacy a few doors down. After standing in line there for what seemed like a long time, I walked back down to the sidewalk the way I'd come. When I got to Eunice's place again, I looked inside through the window with the big letters painted on it that said City Diner. Oh yeah, that's what it's called. Sitting there in the booth was the girl, talking away, big exaggerated hand motions, mixed with laughter. Only this time, sitting across from her was a man. The same man, not stirring his coffee, not smoking a cigarette, not with a twisted, annoyed look on his face, but instead with a big smile on his face. That was 8 days ago. I haven't been able to think about much other than what was said from the time I left until I got my Band-Aids. I've eaten there 5 times since that day without seeing either of them. I asked Eunice yesterday if she knew. She told me no, but added, "If the booths of the City Diner could talk, I bet we would have an unending lesson on humankind." Maybe they can talk.